Okay, welcome to SEO Hangouts with Josh Bashinsky. That's me. Today I have some interesting tidbits of SEO knowledge for you from a couple of John Mueller Hangouts and a couple of other things that have been going on, so I'll just get right to the stuff. So back on August the 12th, John Mueller had a Hangout, which he said some interesting stuff that I thought I would share with all you folks. The first thing he said, now of course, as you know, this has been kind of the summer of SEO hell, and Google has been very adamant and very aggressive in attacking what they consider to be link spam. And basically they've made a change to a number of documents on their website that discuss not only how to rank, but what they consider to be unnatural linking. And essentially, they have basically said in one place or another that pretty much all manual links are no longer what they consider to be the thing you should look for ranking, and are more or less are to be untrusted, and they want you to nofollow them. And so people have been trying to get confirmation from Google, and John Mueller did mention in this Hangout on the 12th that basically, more or less, he said, and pretty much point blank, that Google wants all manual links to be nofollowed. Every single one. So that not only does that include widget links, which Matt Cutts recently put a video out on, but that includes blog links, guest post links, article links, directory links, press release links, and forum links as well. They mentioned a number of times. I don't know if they're referring to links in the post of the forum or links in the signature, or links in the profile for your forum profile. I'm not sure exactly which one they're referring to there. They just say forum links. Now, of course, in the past, John Mueller has talked about forum signature links and how they're not that bad and not to rely on them too much. He's made a complete 180 change from that, and now Google's stance, whenever they're asked now, is pretty adamantly, any manual link that you will make yourself, they do not consider that to be a valid link, and they want you to nofollow that. So, and then, of course, I asked Matt Cutts over Twitter, what will they do for these kinds of links, and he responded to me that they will ignore them. And that also means that if they're ignoring the links, they will only ignore them so much, and those links, if you have too high a percentage of them, will probably bubble up in their process to the manual team, and the manual team will check them, and you are probably looking at some kind of a manual penalty there, some kind of what they call a manual action, which could be against the site or could be against the links. So look at my previous videos. I talked about that in somewhat depth. If it's against the links, it's not such a problem. It just means they can't be sure if you made them or not, and so they don't feel so morally sure to go penalize your site. And if, however, if they see a very high percentage of these links and or they're obviously commercial or they're just having a bad day, they can take an action against your site as well, and then you'll have to go through the disavow process, the deletion process, and then the groveling process, which is the reconsideration request process, which they also mention some other great stuff about. Well, not so great, interesting stuff about that I'm going to mention in a couple of seconds. So I just want to say that this is a complete 180 change. Last year in 2012, Matt Cutts at SMX Advanced said that, and I quote, "We shouldn't write the epitaph for links quite yet," end quote. Well, the end is here, right? Considering that they've changed these documents, considering that Google has come out and said that they don't count these links anymore, considering Google has point blank said they don't consider links to be a good indication of quality anymore, and that they're moving more now into social and other things like that and usage, considering that they changed their documents, considering that they're telling you that they want you to nofollow all these different kinds of manual links, considering that they're so bold as they are to give you actual examples of the links they find that are bad, and they will actually give that in examples of when you send in a reconsideration request, tells me and should tell you that the writing is definitely on the wall for links, for any of the low quality, low authority manual links that can be made. That's not to say that links aren't being counted. They are, obviously, still. That's not to say that you couldn't possibly get some links somewhere or make some links somewhere that could still possibly be beneficial for you. But it is much, much harder, and quite frankly, for some people, I just don't think it's going to be cost effective. The links you make on a low quality blog or a spammy blog or a multi-topic blog is going to be either worthless, it's going to be ignored, or quite frankly, it's going to be risky. So unless you have access to aged domains that you can resurrect, which is still seems to me to be a somewhat a valid strategy, or you have access to guest blog posting where they have not been selling it to anyone else, and it's all on the same topic, and it doesn't look spammy, and the blog you're posting on is aged and authoritative, and it's been around for some time, then and only then, and how authoritative it has to be, what the page rank has to be, how old it has to be, nobody knows. This is anybody's guess. But if you want to err on the side of caution, you have to go much to that end of the scale of the spectrum. So, in my opinion, for many people, it's just simply not going to be worth the effort. It's simply not going to be worth the time and the money to do it. And there are other ways of doing SEO, both white hat and gray hat and black hat. There's other ways of manipulating the algorithms in an approved way or in a non-approved way that are not being caught, not being looked at, and that you can do. So, I would urge people to be very cautious when it comes to building links strictly to your main money site, as they say. And by the way, if you have any questions about that, before I forget, because I'll forget. Before I forget, if you have any questions at all about any SEO issue, you want to ask me about any of that stuff I just talked about, any of this new black hat stuff that's coming out, my email address is joshbachynski@gmail.com. You can also follow my videos at YouTube, youtube.com/jbachins, JBACHYNS. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Josh Bachynski. Okay, so as I mentioned, yes, they will show examples in all their Webmaster Tool notices these days. So if you want to get an example, you've been struggling with trying to get your reconsideration request done, of course, you should check your Webmaster Tools to see if you even have a penalty anymore, or if you have a penalty that's against the site. If you don't, if all you have is a penalty against links, you don't need to do anything. And if it doesn't say anything in your Webmaster Tools about a manual penalty under search queries, manual actions, if you don't have anything listed there, you don't have to do anything anymore. You just keep trying SEO and build your site up and make a good site and all those great things. But if you do, and you submit a reconsideration request from the new form, which I'm going to talk about in a second, because you can't do it any other way now, they do claim that John Mueller has claimed specifically in this August 12th Hangout. That's where you can go to check to see if I'm making this all up. You can go see on August 12th, John Mueller. I'm just reporting here with my own spin, my own interpretation of 12 years of SEO experience, what John Mueller's talking about. You can go see, he says this all here on this Hangout on August 12th. Okay, here's another interesting point that a lot of people aren't talking about. They were talking about it, but not anymore, but now it's starting to become a real factor. It's called Schema, or the microformat HTML that people have been using, the little attributes you can put in your HTML to tell browsers and Google search engines that this is an article, this is a product page, this is a review, this is a rating, this is an author snippet, those kinds of microformats. They're starting to use that now, and quite frankly, for this, and as I've been saying this for the last year, they're going to be using this for the knowledge panel. This is exactly how they're going to be using it now. This thing that's called in-depth articles. If you do a search for in-depth articles, you'll probably get Dr. Pete Meyer's article come up that he talked about in-depth articles. I don't know if anybody's seen this yet when you're searching. This is when it comes up, you do a search on anything, and it thinks you might, it's kind of more of a general head term query. It thinks they don't really know what you want. I think maybe you want more in-depth information. And so they give this section that's called in-depth articles. And if you want to get your article in there, now really only the New Yorker, Salon, New York Times, Washington Post, only big newspaper outlets and big news outlets are really being put there right now. But it is entirely possible, and people have seen lesser sites get put there if they have enough authority and enough trust. So the question is, well, how do I get there? Okay, well, because of course it would be great exposure if you manage to get there. Well, you can get there. It's entirely possible. You would need to have that authority. You would need to have that trust, as I talked about. But not only that, you have to use the schema markup to make sure that your page is marked as an article. You need two things. John Mueller said this specifically. You need to use the microformat HTML to tell Google if it's a product or an info page or if it's an article page. And this is important for SEO in general as well, because although Google can usually tell what page is a product page, what page sells, what page provides information, but it's like leaving it to the judges in MMA. You never want to leave it to the judges, if at all possible. So if you have the time, it's like number 10 down on a list of important SEO things to do. But if you've done everything else, right, and you're looking for more stuff to do, adding the proper microformat to your pages isn't going to hurt. And especially if it tells Google this is a product page, this is an information page, and so they know what to serve for what queries. And watch your SEO rankings after that. You might see a slight fluctuation, especially if Google wasn't sure if this was a product page, if it was an info page, what they should be doing, when they should be serving. The other thing you need to do to show, and you might be able to show up for this in-depth articles promotion. The other thing you need to do to show up for in-depth articles, according to John Mueller, directly from this Hangout, is that you also need to add in your Google Plus Publisher and your Google Plus Authorship for that particular page, and that will help to rank it for in-depth articles. And of course, as I said, having PageRank and authority and being trusted from Google in terms of the usage metrics isn't a bad idea either. Okay. Some more information on Penguin 2. Some interesting leaks came out on Penguin 2.0 for those of you who are still struggling with it. I put a video out a couple weeks ago speculating that it seemed, based on the few sites I looked at in that video and the 50 or 60 other sites I've personally looked at that were either mine and or clients of mine who have come to me to try and get their Penguin fixed, every single one seemed to have a high EMQ to EMD ratio. What do I mean by that? That means if the domain was www.redapples.com, the highest percentage of their links was red apples. Either redapples.com was the anchor text or red space apples was the anchor text. And all of them were hit by Penguin. And not only Penguin 2.0, but they were all hit by payday loans as well. That's the footprint for both of those algorithms. And I have detailed videos put out previously on both of those algorithms. Payday loans covers the stretch of algorithms that was released to June 5th, June 11th or so, and June 27th to 28th. If you were hit in and around those dates, maybe even July 1st to 4th, there's some discrepancy whether that was Panda or not. So if you've been hit by that, you probably have an EMD and look to your backlink profile. It's probably higher in terms of if you have redapples.com, most of your links are red apples in whatever variation. And same with Penguin as well. Penguin seems to follow, oddly enough, it's a very simple pattern to find, but that seems to be the pattern it follows. Now, because people were thinking, well, this is too simple, that can't be the case, and obviously there's something more to it, I asked John Mueller, is this how Penguin works? And his answer, point blank, more or less, was yes. This is, he says there is more to it, and obviously there is, but yes, quite frankly, Penguin, he didn't mention payday loans, but Penguin is an over-optimization web spam algorithm, and that's one clear-cut case that they have of web spam. And they hit tons of false positives. They hit ETS.org, which is a false positive. They hit SalvationArmy.org. Salvation Army clearly probably wasn't engaging in Black Hat. Just it's their brand, and so that's how everyone linked to them. But you can clearly see that Salvation Army was hit with Penguin 2.0, and it has the exact same profile that every other site that was hit with Penguin 2.0, or virtually every other site. So the vast majority of the sites that I've looked at anyway. So obviously there is more to it. They can't just be that. I mean, obviously they'd have too many false positives. So in my best estimation, based on the sites I've looked at, again, it's quite a few, 50 or 60 now at this point. It's not only that there is a high EMQ to EMD ratio, high anchor text that matches your EMD, but also is that it seems to be coming from, again, these kind of article sites that, these kind of linking sites that they're no longer trusting at all, period. Such as new articles, new blogs, multi-topic blogs, or high commercial intent kind of spammy multi-topic blogs that obviously are just being used for Black Hat linking. So all the sites I looked at that stayed hit had that profile. The sites that got hit but then seemed to bounce a little bit back were the ones that were furthest away from those spammy kind of backlinks. So obviously there's some kind of X plus Y equals Z ratio where X is the percentage of your EMQ to EMD, Y is the spamminess of the backlink sources, the untrustworthiness of the backlink sources. And remember, they categorize every site, whether they categorize it as an article site, this kind of site, that kind of site, or page. And so you add those two things together at a certain ratio, and that's what they seem to be hitting. And payday loans seem to be only them changing it per vertical and making that number, that formula higher or lower, depending on how spammy that vertical is, right? That really seems to be how it's working. And John Mueller did confirm in this, you can check the Hangout for yourself, August 12th. You have to read between the lines a bit, but he more or less did admit that, yeah, EMQ to EMD, that spammy linking is what he calls it, that is a factor in Penguin 2.0. So that was an interesting and pretty impressive confirmation on his part. Also, I would like to also mention a couple of the things he mentioned on July 29th in a Hangout. He did mention, not to forget, that Penguin 2.0 is not only about backlinks, but it's also about your on-page as well. Much less so, but it is also about your on-page. Because, of course, if your on-page is not about red apples, then if all your backlinks are red apples, it's not going to affect you, right? So that's one way it's about your on-page. The other way is that he does mention that you cannot have, again, if red apples is my example, you can't have red apples stuffed into all these title attributes and all these alt attributes as well, or stuffed all over the page. That it is about over-optimization. Remember, Penguin was originally, back in 2012, called the over-optimization penalty. And every time Google refers to it now, since then, they call it the Penguin, quote-unquote, web spam algorithm. And so it's not just about links only. John Mueller did confirm in that Hangout back on July 29th, you can take a look at it for yourself, that Penguin does also look for on-page stuff as well. And while I'm on the topic of Penguin, just to round out this topic, on August 16th, on the Hangout recently on August 16th, he did give us a technical or a functional confirmation on exactly how Penguin works. He said that Penguin flags backlinks, or quote-unquote devalues backlinks, the pages, and then that also hits the pages that they point to with a flag. It's like a flag that hits those pages that are essentially sends negative link juice from those backlinks. So that's more or less how it runs, and because that's how it runs, because the site, the page is flagged, so to speak, under the Penguin algorithm, you do have to wait. That is why you have to wait, according to John Mueller. This is from him. This is not me. This is from him. So go check the Hangout. This is why you need to wait for the algo to rerun, so that they will remove the flag. You can delete the links. You can disavow the links. That's not going to work. Now, I've asked him subsequently, can I 404 or 410 the page? If I get rid of all the hit pages, will that get rid of the Penguin penalty? He has yet to answer me on that. Although he did answer, you cannot use a no index. You would have to, so that's not going to work. Because again, the flag is still there. If you no index the page, the flag is still there. That's the reason why. So I asked if I delete the page, like the page is pointing at, if I have been linking to subpages, if I delete those pages that the Penguin's bad negative link juice has been pointing at, will that get rid of the flag on the site? Or is it a site-wide, or is it a page-based that, because it's suits negative link juice at your site, that kind of diffuses to the rest of your site because you have internal linking, right? I've asked him that question. We'll see what he answers. And unfortunately, so once he said that it puts a flag on the site, so you have to wait for the algorithm to rerun, I asked him, okay, well, when's it going to rerun? And basically, his answer was, don't expect it to rerun anytime soon. It can take anywhere from, and I quote, 6 to 9 months, end quote, for the algorithm to rerun. So, not that big of a surprise for people who have been watching my Hangouts and been paying attention to John Mueller and what Google has been doing lately. But quite frankly, it seems to me that they intend to run Penguin. If they follow the same pattern they have already from 2012 and 2013, they're going to run it in the spring and they're going to run it in the fall. That's when they're running Penguin. They run it in April, May, or they run it in October, November. So, which is what they did in 2012, and it looks like what they're going to be doing, unless they've run it and haven't announced it, that's what they're going to be doing for 2013, and probably in perpetuity until they bake it into the algorithm. So, for those of you who are hit by Penguin, you have to delete those links at the source. You have to disavow them, or you have to delete the target pages. Maybe if you 404 or 410 them, maybe that will get rid of the penalty right away. Otherwise, you have to wait for the darn thing to rerun, and it's highly punitive, and I think it's a terrible thing for Google to do. I think it's immoral, quite frankly, to be so punitive and draconic. There's no need. But I don't run the world, unfortunately. I only report on it, what I see. Okay, so moving right along to August 16th, John Mueller had yet another Hangout in which he confirmed some very interesting things. Let me mention these things for you. So the first thing is, this might not apply to everybody, but some people are wondering about this. When it comes to subdomains, because, as I just mentioned, a lot of people have been linking to subpages to try and, get link juice deeper into the site to try and diffuse the risk. People have been linking to subdomains. So if they had blog.redapples.com or if they had news.redapples.com, so if one of the subdomains were hit by any particular penalty, does that affect the entire site? How does that affect the entire site? And so John Mueller was asked this: how does Google treat subdomains, and especially when it comes to penalties? And he mentioned, and he's mentioned this for years already, so the rules for Google hasn't changed. that they have algorithms to determine if the subdomain should be considered part of the site or if the subdomain is a different site. So, for example, if you have blog.redapples.com, they'll consider that part of the site. And they'll consider it as if you had redapples.com/blog. And so all the link juice will pass, and all the penalties will pass as well. But if you have, whatever, orangeplatooncucumbers.blogspot.com, and that site gets a penalty, that subdomain got the penalty. It's not going to transfer onto blogspot.com because clearly, Blogspot is a site that lets you register multiple subdomains, and so their algorithm. That's why they made an algorithm to determine that. So if you have dev.redapples.com, maybe they won't. Design.redapples.com. If you have some subdomain that seems to have nothing to do and it has no duplicate content and it has not even a duplicate design from the other site, they'll consider it a different site and the penalty shouldn't transfer. So this is what John Mueller said. And if it is the same domain, then same design, same content, similar topic, and it's like some standard subdomain that you'd see someone have, like m.redapples.com for mobile or blog.redapples.com for a blog, then the penalty could very well transfer. So you have to be careful. And you have to try and fix both. Okay, the next thing. So here's another thing that I reported on last week or the week before. As you know, Google has recently put out this manual actions reporting in Webmaster Tools. And I have at least 10 or 12 sites now that I've looked at that originally had a penalty versus site for unnatural links. And they had to disavow their links and all that kind of bullcrap. But then when this new feature came out and they checked if their penalty in Webmaster Tools, they were fully expecting to see an unnatural link notice, a penalty, action versus site. Because that's what they originally were told they had. But when they looked in the Webmaster Tools manual action section, they found out that they have an action versus links. Now that is totally different. An action versus links means they've taken action on some of your backlinks and they're not sure if they're made by you or not, so they only take action against the backlinks. That means that all they do is essentially automatically no-follow those links. They devalue those links. They click a button, be devalued. That does not mean your site has a penalty in any way, shape, or form, and that means you shouldn't do anything. You shouldn't disavow any links. You shouldn't do anything like that because it's dangerous. And so, quite frankly, I asked John Mueller, and he didn't understand my question, and so you'll see on the 16th he kind of fudges it up and doesn't understand my question, but he kind of guesses as to what I thought I meant. And he does say that if you have an action versus site, then you do have to disavow your links. However, and he says, and this is point blank, but if you only have an action versus links, you don't have to do anything. This is coming from John Mueller. You don't have to do anything, and you shouldn't do anything. This is straight from him. Because putting the powerful links, good links in your disavow file will automatically no-follow them. I've seen many people shoot themselves in the foot. The disavow file does do something for some people if you're using it correctly, so to speak. So they do have safeguards in it. If you put all your backlinks in it, apparently they will ignore that because they think you're just shooting yourself in the foot. But if you do put a few backlinks in it, they will take, apparently, from what they've been saying, strenuously, don't do that, it's dangerous. And from what I've seen for clients coming to me who've been playing around with their disavow file, unfortunately they've been playing around with it and putting links in there, and they've essentially negative SEO'd themselves. That will remove any strength of the links you put in there, and it will automatically no-follow them. And so, if you have received an action versus links, check your Webmaster Tools to make sure that's what it is. And if it is the case, you don't have to do anything. This is not only coming from an experienced SEO such as myself, this is coming straight from Google. This is coming straight from John Mueller. He's confirmed it. So I would take that very seriously. All right. He also, speaking of confirmations on their algorithms, John Mueller also confirmed, again, he's confirmed this like literally a dozen times now, that aggregate user happiness is what is used for Panda. It is not directly related to duplicate content, because he was asked this again, and he said, no, it's not directly related to duplicate content. If you clean up your dupe content on your site, it's not necessarily going to fix your Panda problem, because Panda has to do with the usage metrics of how well people are enjoying your site. Panda has to do with where they go to the SERP, they go to your site, they don't like it, and they go back and they click another result. Panda has to do with how many returning visitors you seem to get. Panda has to do with how well people are using your site and how well they're enjoying each page. And this is the kind of thing that either seems to trigger a Panda review or is directly used in a Panda review. And I have tons of data to show this. They also have, so that's the Panda algorithm that runs monthly, which aggregates probably some or all those metrics. They also have, and John Mueller's confirmed this as well numerous times, they also have a usage metric pogo sticking algorithm, which seems to detect the percentage that position 4 or position 5 should get. And if that's not the click-through you're getting, and if you're getting bounce back, again, that can affect your ranking pretty much immediately. And I have plenty of data to show that now and prove this. And experiments to show and prove this. And this will be a very interesting field of SEO coming up in the near future. But John Mueller has confirmed again that they are directly reading user metrics in their algorithms, and this is what they're using for Panda. You mentioned Panda specifically. Okay, and so last but not least, this thing I was talking about before, that because they're now reporting manual actions in your Webmaster Tools, how do you do a reconsideration request? If you check the old page for reconsideration request, it's not there anymore. Well, I mean, it's there. You can click on it, and it says select a site. You select a site, but then it takes you automatically to the Webmaster Tools page of that site. And if you do not have a manual action, you cannot submit for reconsideration. This means a number of things. This means you used to be able to submit for reconsideration just to check and see, and probably too many people were doing that, and so now they turned that off. You cannot submit for reconsideration unless you have a manual penalty in your Webmaster Tools. And if you do, then and only then you can submit for reconsideration. So this means, well, what if I don't have Webmaster Tools installed? Well, that means you're SOL. You can't submit for reconsideration. So this is what you need to do if you want to submit for reconsideration. One, you have to have transferred the site to your own Webmaster Tools account. Otherwise, you can't submit for reconsideration. Two, you have to have Webmaster Tools installed, obviously. And three, you have to have a penalty in Webmaster Tools. If not, then you cannot submit for reconsideration. So, here's a couple tips. One, when you're buying a domain, ask to see the Webmaster Tools to the site you're buying, because this means that probably they are going to report, and Google has said, John Mueller has said, and Matt Cutts has said, they're going to report whenever a site has a penalty, they are 99.9% sure it's going to show up in your Webmaster Tools. So that's why they're reporting them now. Apparently it's supposed to work, so we'll have to take Google at the word for that. And so if you don't have a penalty in there, you don't have a penalty, you don't have to worry about having a penalty, and you don't have to submit for reconsideration. If you do have a penalty in there, if it's versus links, as I was saying, you do not have to submit for reconsideration. All they'll do is send you a message back saying you still have bad links. Please put them in the disavow file so we can read machine language, learn how to find bad links better. So you're only helping out Google find black hats better.